This video concludes the Aduro video series. As you are aware of, this video series contains a total of 10 videos. It started off with me just introducing you to the idea. Then there was a investor presentation by Ofer and Mina. Then we had a chemical presentation by Anil, Ofer and Mina. Then each of those sessions had their own question and answers sessions, which each of them were like an hour long. Then we had some interviews with partners, Exergy, Brightlands, Camelot, Campus, interview with two investors, Yazan and Penny Queen. And now I'm doing this conclusion. So it's a lot of information, but that is what is required. That is exactly what is required to understand Aduro. And if I were you, I would not be putting a penny into Aduro until I watched the entire video series. And maybe even after this, you might have some questions. But my video series is a good starting point for you to understand Aduro. And in my opinion, the next 2 years, whether you are invested in Aduro or some other ideas that you have, are going to determine the kind of returns that you're going to have. This is probably one of the best times to set yourself up for the future. And you see, right now, Mr. Market is very pessimistic about everything. The Mr. Market is talking about recession, interest rates going up. Everything is bad. But what we do know about Mr. Market is that Mr. Market is bipolar. Mr. Market goes from being pessimistic, normal, to optimistic. And of course, there's different levels of optimism and there are different levels of pessimism. And right now, what I see in the market is that Mr. Market is so pessimistic about everything. And Mr. Market only wants to choose to invest in particular companies. So for example, very solid, profitable, safe investments. That's what Mr. Market approves of right now. And it made me think about this because if Mr. Market approves those safe, profitable investments, what do I want to be in? What do I think is going to perform the best? Probably everything that Mr. Market doesn't approve, because right now Mr. Market is throwing away those companies that are outside of that. Maybe companies that are, developing something that is going to be profitable down the road. That's what Mr. Market doesn't want today. And I think that creates tremendous opportunities. And I'm not just talking about Aduro, I'm talking about in general. But when it comes to Aduro, what can we expect going forward? Well, I would say the next thing to look forward to is the completion of R2 for plastic. That's when the company will be able to test the feedstock, plastic feedstock for many different companies. And a lot of players are waiting for that R2 to be finished. And it will be later this year. That's going to be a major milestone. We already learned through that video series that the company is involved with a lot of different players. It is engaging with a lot of major series players as well as the medium and small players. So I would say that we should probably hope or expect to see some kind of news flow from that kind of engagements, correct? Right? Because it's like a pipeline. You have engagements coming in, and then some of them don't come out on the other end, but some of them do. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some kind of press releases in the future with, partnerships, various different engagements, and that will be a game changer because at this point, Aduro is very much unknown. It's just at the beginning of getting exposure, and people like yourself, like myself, there's some skepticism. Oh, is their technology going to work? Is their technology going to be part of the solution? And if they come out with press releases with big names or medium well-known names, then this will be a validation. And when that happens, I would suspect that the company's valuation will be readjusted. But that's, I have to warn you, because that's when the market is normal. And we've seen this over and over, where a company reaches certain milestones and the market just becomes more pessimistic, because the market was neutral and it became super pessimistic. And even though the company reached a certain milestone, the stock price is 50% lower. So that becomes frustrating. So be ready for that. Anything can happen. But here's what I can tell you with certainty. Mr. Market goes from pessimistic, normal, to optimistic. And right now it's very pessimistic. And of course it can get more pessimistic, but the market doesn't stay depressed forever. You can be depressed forever, but the market doesn't. That's what makes it bipolar. It goes through those stages. So what happens when the market starts acting normal? What happens when the market becomes optimistic about companies? And what happens when the market becomes more adventurous and wants to go after companies that don't fit that safe, profitable, box? What happens then? Well, then the market is going to start bidding up companies that are outside of the circle. And I think Aduro is in that bucket. So the next step, I said in one of the videos that we could have a live call with the management, which I would open it up to members outside of Microcap Explosions. But what we have to do for that, if you're interested to have the call, I need you to email me the questions, okay? If I don't get questions ahead of time, there will be no call. I need to have at least 10 questions from you guys in order to set up the live call with the management. And it will be limited to about 100 people, because it will be through Google Meet, and that's the limit, 100 people. But it will be open to anybody, and I don't think that this will be a problem. And yes, you will be able to ask questions that are outside of the questions that you submit, but that's a starting point. So if I don't get the questions, there's no live call. So email me your questions, and then whether it's a week or 2 weeks from now, I will set it up. One other thing that I wanted to say is, if you remember in the first video, I said that there was a private placement done about 4 months ago. And this week, I believe it's on Friday, some of those shares become tradable. And you can already kind of see this in the action, because there is some short interest being built. So don't be surprised if more shares come on the market starting on Friday, and even this week, because people start shorting it ahead of time, that there might be some weakness. So you can view it as an opportunity to get shares if you like Aduro opportunity. So this is FYI. The stock might be weak because of that, in addition to Mr. Market's mood. But what am I doing myself? I have 450,000 shares of Aduro. I don't plan on selling any of this. I don't really plan on buying more at this point. Of course, it might change. So for me, I have my shares. I like to sit tight. I view Aduro as 3 to 5 year opportunity. I don't view it as 2 to 3 weeks opportunity, and hopefully you won't either. And because you should be a long-term investor, if you choose this idea, as I said in my previous video, I don't want to hear your complaints. If the stock goes down, whatever amount, I don't want to hear it. Plan it in your head already. If I buy X number of shares in Aduro or anything else, plan it in your head. What am I going to do if the stock goes down? Am I going to cry to Mariusz and I'm going to call him names? Or am I going to buy more shares, or just sit on the shares that I have? So anyway, with that being said, thank you for watching the entire Aduro video series. I hope you learned a lot. I hope that you will take the opportunity to do more due diligence on this idea, and then at the end of the day, decide whether Aduro is something that you want to put in your portfolio.